on that camera and strap in. It's time for another episode of TOGCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news and tips, along with your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, good Wednesday evening. Thanks for joining me for another live edition of TOGCHAT. Before we get going, you know the drill. I need you all, please take a minute and tell your photography friends that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. You can click the share button underneath the video right down there or share that link, tog.chat/live. I'll paste it here in the chat window for you guys right now. Let me go ahead and stick that in there really quick. Whoops. Helps if I spell right, doesn't it? tog.chat/live. There you go. Please let people know that we are here. And the cool part is we got a lot of people here already tonight, and we got people tuning in from all over the world. So please, if you haven't done so already, check in. Leave me a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. I got Margot just got here from Atlanta. Ken from the UK. David in San Diego. I got William in Ottawa, Canada. Lawrence is here from Rugby, England. Lynn is here from New York. And we got Nick in New Jersey. Steven's here from Scranton. Kevin in Round Rock. And the list goes on. It's great to see you guys. Seriously, I appreciate you all being here. I'm kind of excited. We got a lot of questions lined up for the night. Like, good stuff. So keep posting though. I will do my best to answer everything in the next 60 minutes. Some of these are going to be quick answer questions. Some of them, we're going to get a little bit in depth into some things tonight. So that's cool. So get your questions in there, okay? And you know what? We're going to dive in. The only business stuff I got to give you guys, look, you know that I'm doing these online presentations. You can call them webinars. You can call them classes. Please check them out, right? Most of them are free. Not all of them. Most of them are free. The ones that are paid are like 15 bucks, 10 bucks. They're not super expensive, right? So here's the link. I'm not going to dwell on it. If you've been to any of my webinars, feel free to put some comments in here about whether or not they sucked. Feel free. Let people know, okay? But other than that, I've got questions. So I want to dig in. I want to help you guys solve some problems tonight, all right? So a couple of questions came in early to my Facebook group. I always put out a call each week to say like, hey, you know, what can I help you guys with? So let's go ahead and hit one of those. In fact, we had two questions this week about light meters and flash meters together. So let's hit with that. So from Vladimir, when measuring with a flash meter, some photographers add plus 1.33 EV to their measurements. For example, on the flash meter, it shows f8. They go ahead and they set their lens to f5, and the highlights don't get burned out. So he wants to know, how do they pull that off? So basically what he's saying is they overexpose based on what the meter says, but nothing blows out. So Vladimir, there's a couple reasons. So if you don't mind, I'm actually going to jump to the second meter question because it's very similar. And then we're going to answer them together, right? Because it's basically both the same answer. So here we go. Let's turn that one off, turn that one on. Okay. From Joe, why is it that when I use my light meter, my exposures are consistently blown out? Similar but not exact, right? He uses a Sekonic 305S. He aims the meter towards the light and uses a Nikon D7000. So for both of you guys, Vladimir and Joe, there's a lot of reasons why things can go wrong with a meter. So you have to do a little bit of troubleshooting, right? So generally, this one happens to be a 478 DR. This is actually the one that I use. It is a Sekonic. This is the one that I generally use for video, not for stills, okay? But a meter is a meter to, in this conversation. So first of all, Joe, you said that you pointed towards the light. I just want to make sure that when you say pointing towards the light, that means that you essentially have it at your subject like you see me doing here, and that you are aiming it towards the light from there. Chuck, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate it. So that's not a bad thing to do. So like my key light, I have two lights in front of me. I have a fill light and I have a key light. So here's part of the challenge, Joe. If I aim this towards my key light, I am now getting an accurate measurement for my key light, but I'm not really dealing with my fill light, right? So the proper way to use this type of a meter is to aim it towards the camera lens, from the subject to the camera lens, right? And then you're going to get the combination of the two lights. There is an exception. Let's just say that I've got a rim light back there, and I'm trying to get that light just a little bit brighter on the side of my face. Obviously, I can't put the meter here, right? Then I'm gonna have to go ahead and I'm gonna have to meter back there to get that. So that's one thing. Make sure that you're using it properly. Number two, understand that meters, just like cameras, they get dinged around, they get banged around over time. The calibration may not be exactly what it is. And honestly, it's okay if your meter's not properly calibrated. Now, that sounds like a really bad statement, so pause, breathe, let me explain, right? If your meter is consistently a stop-off, in other words, like you've learned from using your meter that anytime it says f8, I better shoot at 5.6, otherwise I'm gonna be underexposing my image, right? Okay, that's cool. So then basically, you're always gonna overexpose by one stop of what the meter says, or maybe you need to underexpose by a stop. That's okay. Keep in mind, back in the film days, so now follow along close on this statement because it's going to sound like I'm being a little wishy-washy. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. I'm just trying to keep it real. Back in the film days, a light meter was an extremely important piece of kit. Even if you mostly did natural light work, whatever, it was still a really good idea to have a handheld meter. In the digital realm, that's not nearly as big an issue. Why? Because we can chimp. If you're a DSLR shooter, you can chimp. You take your image, you peek at it, you see what it looks like. Cool. Takes seconds. If you're a mirrorless shooter and you're working with your EVF, well, then you're seeing the finished exposure in camera. So it's not nearly as big a deal. Now, obviously, if it's a flash meter and you're working with flashes, you're not seeing that in real time in camera, but you can set your camera so you fire the flash, preview instantly. You know exactly where you're at. So it's really easy to compare your camera against the flash meter and vice versa. And you'll find that even when you have a discrepancy, it's usually going to be a consistent discrepancy, right? So I know, people that are of, and I'm not insulting engineers, but people that are of kind of an engineer's mindset have a hard time dealing with the discrepancy, even though it's consistent. So in your case, yeah, you may have to either go get your camera recalibrated if you determine it's the camera. Maybe you got to go get a new meter if you determine it's the meter. But honestly, as long as it's consistent and as long as you're checking your exposures, that's fine. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I find that really the bigger problem, and I'm not talking about Vladimir or Joe because I don't know enough about what they're doing, but I find one of the bigger problems that people have when it comes to metering today is lack of consistency. And I don't mean with their light meter. Obviously, obviously the lack of consistency is with the light meter, but where the real problem with that lack of consistency is in paying attention. Just simply paying attention. In other words, you're shooting frame after frame after frame. If they're underexposed, they're underexposed. It's not like in the film days where you had to wait 7 days to find out. You screwed up, right? You know it right then and there. So why would you keep shooting images that are underexposed, right? There's no reason to do that. And that brings us back to the question, what is proper exposure? How do you determine that? So literally, I was not going to pimp out my workshops tonight. That was not the plan. But just so you guys know, next week, it is not loading. As soon as it loads, there it is. June 16th, I have a webinar coming up that is all about exposure. What is correct exposure? We also talk about the exposure triangle and why you should potentially ignore the concept that it is a triangle, because you need to understand the relationships in a very different way, actually. So it's a free webinar. You might want to consider signing up. You'll find it very useful. Okay? All right, next question that I have on the list here. This one comes from Tony. And whoops, let me just get that up there. There it is. So Tony, I use Nikon. He does. And I know you use Olympus, Joe. Typically, I see you, meaning me, with newer lenses. Do you or can you use older manual lenses on your Olympus cameras? And if so, do you have a favorite? So the answer is I don't. Yes, you can. So no, I don't have a favorite. Let me explain. Pretty much any camera out there, if you find the right gadget guy, in other words, the guy that's going to, machine you an adapter if it doesn't already exist, you can adapt darn near any lens to any camera if you're willing to spend the money to create the adapter. Remember a couple of weeks back, I did an interview with David Burnett. He is like the master of, I want to put this lens with that camera because. And it's literally usually for like one very kind of specific look that he's after. I'm just not into that. I'm not kind of the gear gadget guy. So I don't do it. I do know of photographers that have adapted lenses to the Olympus cameras, whether it be the older Olympus lenses or whether it be, other lenses. So pretty much any brand, this isn't really an Olympus situation, but pretty much with any brand, once you start adapting older lenses or different brand lenses, understand they're not going to work the same way as a lens that is engineered and designed for that camera, right? It's just not. So, and that's why, people like David Burnett, when he does those kinds of things, he's looking for a very specific kind of look and feel to his shot. I don't approach my photography that way. It's not a matter of better, it's just different, right? So for me, there's really no value. Also, do keep in mind that if you're going to put like the older Olympus film lenses onto the newer digital cameras, the film lenses, depending on how old they are, were probably meant for 35 millimeter, which would kind of be the equivalent of full frame today. However, the current Olympus bodies are micro four thirds, as are the lenses, right? So you've also got a difference in format size. So you'll be using a smaller portion of the lens. Also, part of what makes Olympus cameras so amazing with their sharpness and clarity is the what's called telecentric lens design, meaning that when the light leaves the last optic in the lens, it is traveling straight at the sensor. Traditionally, lenses basically have the light crisscross, and the light crisscrosses on its way to the sensor. Full frame cameras do that. So the other problem that you would have by putting that older lens on the Olympus camera is, you've got a camera that's designed for telecentric lenses, but you're putting old school optics on it, so the light's going to be hitting the sensor in a very different way. I don't know for a fact because I haven't done it, but I would anticipate there's a good chance that you would have some sharpness issues when you do that, Tony. But that's kind of one of those things. Obviously, I'm not a gearhead. If you're into that kind of stuff and you enjoy playing with it, go for it. Have fun with it. I certainly, for me, I'm all about the idea of people experimenting with things and just really kind of pushing the potential of their cameras and what they can do. So, all right. Here's a nice short one from John. I wish to create a printed portfolio of my work to show clients once we start up again. I happen to know John's in Pennsylvania, as am I, and we are still not completely out of lockdown. In fact, my portion of Pennsylvania, we just got out of red last Friday, so we're now yellow, which means we are allowed to move about a little bit. Restaurants still aren't open, hair salons still aren't open, but that kind of stuff. So, so once we open up again, he wants to be able to do a printed portfolio. His thought is that it would be a complement, kind of an add-on with his marketing to his webpage. He has one print so far that's 11 by 14, and his thought is it's big, it shows detail, and he loves it. So the question, what size should I use for this printed portfolio? He is looking to have a few different printed portfolios made and inserted into a fancy binder, or should I have them printed into a book? Also, he says, how should I size different images? Example, food items versus people versus landscape. And then I did follow up to ask him, what do you shoot? he shoots commercial landscapes, concerts, and corporate events. So a couple of things, John. Right off the bat, the one thing that like screamed at me when I read that is do not do a binder. Binders are so like 1980s when it comes to portfolios and marketing. That's what I used to use back in the day, right? Binders are gone. You want a printed bound book today. And part of the reason is not only do they look more elegant, but they're really affordable today, right? So that's step number one. That being said, to do a book that's actually going to handle 11 by 14 size images, it's going to be pretty doggone expensive when you get that big. You could do like a 12-inch book, and then keep in mind if you do a double truck. So in the printing world, that's what they call it when you have a picture go across 2 pages, right? So like maybe in the very, very middle of the book when you open it up, if you would have a picture go all the way across, that would be a 24-inch by 12-inch. So it needs to kind of be a wide landscape image, but that would be a 24-inch image. So you can still have big images. I don't know that I would go 11 by 14 simply for the standpoint of cost, right? So John, before we even kind of get into solving a problem, there's a couple things that we need to kind of really evaluate with your business, and you need to evaluate with your business. And that is, so as I look at your 3 genres that you listed commercial landscape, concert, and corporate events. So let's do it backwards, right? Corporate events. I don't think you're going to get too many images that are going to, look like they belong in a coffee table book, right? And you're probably not doing face-to-face, let's sit down and chat kind of meetings with potential corporate event clients. So I definitely would not worry about corporate events. I would not do a book for that at all. It's honestly not worth it. I think you're going to find that most of your potential customers in the corporate event world are going to be like, yeah, okay, I saw the stuff on the website. I got it. That's cool. We're good. Because part of it is they're not going to print the images in a book like that. So it's not really going to have kind of that emotional connection when they see it in tangible form, right? Concert photography, you can print a book for your own good, but who are you going to show it to? Right? Kind of the same thing, right? So let's say you meet a band. There's a band in your area and it's like they're interested. So you show up, to meet them for the first time. You've got a nice fancy album. You open it up and the pictures are amazing. But are they going to put those pictures in a book? No, right? So I don't think there's going to be a lot of value there. And the commercial landscape stuff, honestly, I wouldn't do a book to show them either because of that word commercial. But what you might want to do is you might want to convince your commercial landscaping clients of the power of having a tangible book that shows beautiful images of their landscape work that they have done, especially if they do residential landscaping, because they are going to go out to clients' homes. And they are going to meet those clients and talk about what services they offer. They're going to take a walk through the clients' backyards and yards, and they're going to talk about the landscaping options. And then they're going to draw out, especially if it's a big project, they're going to draw out plans and all that for it. For them to be able to have a printed book that, high quality, beautiful images that shows off the work that they have done, that is an excellent sales tool for them, because part of their sales process is a face-to-face kind of feel-good type of situation. It's not all done online, right? So if you had been telling me that you were a wedding photographer, I would say, oh my God, of course you need albums. Even for a portrait photographer, potentially albums. For those 3 genres, I just have to be honest, I don't know that there's actually going to be value for you to invest that kind of money. So that would be my advice there. So you really kind of need to think through that a little bit more, okay? All right, another question here from Tony. By the way, I see you guys got some good questions coming in. Don't worry, I'm going to get to them. These came in early, but we'll do them all, I promise, all right? Tony says, I often shoot using a viewfinder, but I seem to have issues calibrating it right. Any tips? When he's asking me, when I use my viewfinder, do you have it set with your glasses on or off? So unfortunately, Tony, everything I do is based on glasses on. Eyes have always been an issue for me. I started wearing eyeglasses when I was 9 years old. I have something that they call amblyopia, meaning it's basically a lazy eye. My right eye is only a little bit more than legally blind. It corrects very well with glasses, but it's pretty bad. Super, super nearsighted. My left eye is, 20/20. It's probably lost a little bit now that I'm, kind of getting up there in years. And at this point in my life, I wear trifocals. So, there are 3 lenses built into these, okay? Reading at the bottom, mid-range, and then distance at the top. That's why a lot of times when you guys see me here, you'll see me kind of do one of these. And that's because I'm close to the screen, so I'm trying to get to the right spot in my lens. That's just something you ultimately wind up doing and wear these. So that being said, everything I'm doing, Tony, it's based on the glasses being on. As far as issues calibrating, the only tip that I could give you in all sincerity is take your time. So they do make calibration devices which are actually designed for calibrating where your lens is. And I've talked many times in the past, if I have a lens that needs to be calibrated, no way in the world I'm doing it. It's going back to the manufacturer, period. I don't trust myself with that. And I want my stuff tack sharp. I've never had to do it, but if I did, that would be my plan. So I will tell you, though, that every camera body that I own and have owned, all my Nikon bodies back in the day, every one of my Olympus bodies, I have the viewfinders calibrated to work with my glasses. So since, of course, I'm wearing trifocals, number one, it's very important to make sure that I have them calibrated so that I'm basically putting my eye to the camera the same way every time. Because if I'm sloppy and have it low or have it high and I've calibrated for the middle, I'm not going to be able to see what's in focus, right? So that being said, I do make sure that when I look through the viewfinder, I'm right at the middle. That's always my target, is right at the middle of my eyeglass lens. That way I'm looking through, kind of the medium distance on the lens. That's what I have it dialed in for. And certainly it helps a lot if you pick something to look at while you're looking through the camera and making that adjustment. Pick something to look at that number one, make sure you're within proper focal range of your lens. I've seen people do it literally, to say, hey, so this is how I've been doing it. And they pick it up and they'll have a 50mm lens on, but they'll aim it down here at their keyboard. And so they're 8 inches away from the object, which the camera can't focus in the first place. And they're trying to get the diopters correct in the lens. That's not going to work. So, maybe a foot or two away, but try and find something that's got some nice, crisp vertical lines in it, and maybe a horizontal line or two. It doesn't have to be a focus chart or a test chart, but you want to be able to look at something where you're going to be able to look through there and say, yes, that is as clear as it could be, or it's not, right? And patience is the other thing. Just take your time with it. It's not something that you rush. I've had people say, well, do you have to keep updating it? Do you have to do it over time? No, at least I haven't run into that. Even as my prescriptions have changed with my glasses, I can't say that because it's not like they changed dramatically from 1 year or 2 years to the next, but I can't say I've had a situation where I get brand new glasses and then I go ahead and have to recalibrate all the cameras. That's not an issue. Eric, that's an awesome idea. So Tony, Eric just mentioned for us here that he often pulls up the camera menu to help them set the diopter, because that way you're getting text. You're getting text that we know is in focus. So Eric, that's really pretty smart and simple. So there you go. Okay. So, all right, let's see. What else do I got here? From Lane. How would you address issues to resolve how a person smiles for a picture? I've tried many methods and I keep getting the forced smile or the serious smile. That special natural smile seems to be the hardest for some people. So Lane, one of the things that I will point out, and I just kind of make the point, right? So I'm not saying that you do this, but a lot of photographers do this. Even in you asking me this question, you have used the word smile 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Understand that when you have a subject in front of you, and I happen to know Lane's part of my mentoring group, so I happen to know he recently photographed a young 14-year-old teenager, so this is kind of where his frustration's coming from. Especially with a young teenager, if you utter the word smile, you might as well have just cursed. Now, obviously, I don't mean in the sense that you've offended them, but you basically blew it, because the minute you say that word, you have forced a forced expression. What's missing from that description that I gave you is the word emotion. So that natural smile that you're looking for, it's natural because it's based on emotion. There's a couple things that all of you need to understand about smiles. It's kind of smiles and laughs. They kind of go hand in hand here. So especially if you're married or you live with someone, you have a spouse, this is a lot easier to kind of test. But the next time your significant other laughs in front of you, pay really close attention to their face. Laughing is not attractive. It's just not. For anybody, period. But yet, why do we enjoy it? Why are we attracted to it? Because of the emotion that's involved, right? Now, then we pick up a camera and we want to freeze these moments in time. Now the challenge becomes, if we say to somebody, smile, it's forced. We learn that when we're toddlers, and it becomes like locked in. It's a conditioned response, and there's no emotion behind it. That's why it doesn't look natural. Okay? So, number one, never say the word smile. It's a word that I never use. And the overwhelming majority of my images are happy, right? Not necessarily big happy, but happy. Even my serious images lean towards a little bit of happy. Not all of them, but a lot. So I talk about emotions. First thing I'll do is when I'm getting ready to do a shot is I will explain to my subject, okay, so I'm thinking this should be happy, right? So I want to go with a lot of energy, right? So we want it to be really happy, and I want it to be energetic. Now, did you notice what I was doing as I was saying that? So again, I've got a subject in front of me, and if it's a portrait, before I pick up the camera, or I should say actually before I pick up the camera, I'm going to do my test shots first. And I always tell my subject, just chill, just relax. I'm just figuring my stuff out. We're going to be good to go in a second, right? And then as I'm doing them, I'm talking out loud. And then as I get to that last one, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to look awesome. Okay, cool. So you're the subject now, gang, right? I want this shot to be really happy, like definitely energetic. I want, I don't want a big cheesy smile, but I'm just thinking like just a happy, like really good time. You're feeling good about things. I mean, look at that outfit. You look amazing. I got to tell you, this lighting is cool. So let's really focus on that really happy energy, right? And then I'll pick up the camera. So what did I do? As I'm starting to tell them this, much more importantly than any words that came out of my mouth, even though we already determined, don't say smile, bad word. Much more importantly, what I was doing was my eyes were getting bigger. I was talking faster. My energy was up. I was happy. I was smiling. People will reflect back what you give them. They can't control it. It's very hard to not do it. So basically, when you are trying to manipulate a portrait subject, because that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to manipulate that person into giving us, whether it be a pose or an emotion or a look or whatever it is, we've got to coax them, coerce them, demand them, plead with them, beg them, whatever it takes. We got to get them to do it, right? So basically, you want to cheat like hell. You're going to do anything and everything you can do to make it happen. Right? So, I mean, I could go and I could find a picture with a nice, pretty soft smile, natural smile, as Lane says. I could show it to him and say, here, do this. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is I've actually just challenged the person. I've shown them a picture of someone else who is potentially prettier or more handsome than they are and said, here, I want you to look like this person. That's not a good way to do it, right? And if I say smile, well, then I've just asked them to do cheese. And the problem with doing that with a woman, especially, this is not a sexist comment, but bottom line is you do it with a woman, that upper lip is going to roll under. It's going to thin out. They lose the upper lip. Women don't like that. Women like full lips, okay? So the challenge is mirror what you want, but also be clear about what you want without saying smile. And the same thing applies for pose, gang, right? If you say pose, you're going to get a person that looks stiff, period. Okay? There's a follow-up question that I saw that just came in there, and I apologize. I do not know how to say that name. Let me know how I should address you, okay? Similar to that question, though, do you have any tips on creating the illusion of movement in shots beyond just making the move and taking shots until you get the one you like? So, now see, your question started out with one answer, but then by the time I finished reading it, it actually is a completely different thing you're asking me. So let me explain. Anytime that I want movement in my photos, I will use a simple example. I want it to look like the model is, so this is a full-length picture, gang. So everybody imagine, full-length vertical shot, and I want it to look like the model is walking. Okay? So let's answer that first. I don't think that's what this question is actually about, so I'm going to give you two answers, but let's answer that one first. I will do one of two things. It depends, one, on your skill level, two, on your comfort level, three, on how comfortable and confident your subject is. So if I have a very confident subject who is comfortable, I will tell them, okay, so in fact, actually, I can give you a perfect example of this. When I used to shoot modeling portfolios for a living, if I would have a girl that would come to me between the ages of like 18 and 22 and maybe even 24, 25, 26, depending on how young she looked, one of the photos that I would always do, especially if she lived in the eastern portion of the United States, I would do a photograph of her looking like a college co-ed. Because the fact of the matter is, the looking people of the same age group who are really college co-eds, and believe me, they frequently do that, but they also frequently hire models. So it was an important picture for a guy or a girl to have in their portfolio. So I would actually drive 10 minutes away to the college where my wife teaches, and the great part about that particular school, there's one stretch on campus that looks literally like it's Ivy League. It could be Harvard or any of those schools, Princeton. And then there's another stretch that's kind of very modern and very glass and concrete and that. And it looks like it could be like a very new kind of West Coast type school, okay? And I would dress them up in a hoodie and the whole bit, and it's the stereotype shot. Give them a stack of books, they'd have a backpack on, and I would have them stand on a spot. And I would say, okay, you're going to walk down this sidewalk. And frequently what they would be doing is they would walk in this direction, so just past my shoulder here, and then I would pick a window in a building, like on the first floor, just above me, over here. And I would tell them, I want you to turn your face towards this window, and as you walk down the sidewalk, you're going to look at the window, right? So it's kind of like walking and chewing gum all at the same time, right? But that's what I have them do. And then I would go ahead and I would explain that, look, here's the scenario. You're running late for class. You're not stressed, but you got to get there. And somebody calls your name. So you look over and it's like, hey, how are you? Right? It's that response, that hey. I would give them that whole breakdown. And then I would tell them, okay, you ready on three? We're going to go. 1, 2, 3, boom. Now, if the person is really confident, they go and it looks amazing. If the person is really nervous, suddenly they're incapable of actually walking normally because I've given them too many directions, right? But after that very first time, now I know how I'm going to get the shot done. For the confident person, I'm going to let them go a bunch of steps. I'm going to get 2 or 3 frames. I'm not just pressing the button down and shooting the whole way. No. I'm going for a couple of frames, but then I'm going to send them back to the same spot. And now what I'm going to tell them is like, okay, we're going to do this a couple of times. That was great. It's exactly what I want. But here's what I need you to do. I need you to make sure that every time when you come back to this line, you have your toes on this line and you start with your left foot or right foot. It doesn't matter. The point being, it has to be the same foot. That way, each time they are going to recreate the same physicality. So all I have to worry about is the facial expression. Catch the right facial expression. And then as you're doing it, I can tell them, oh, that's awesome. You know what? This next time, do it a little more energy, like, hey, like really excited. And then I get my shot. If the person was really nervous and they literally couldn't walk, and I'm not trying to be mean towards anybody, but it's actually funny. You give a person too many directions and suddenly like they're incapable of walking like a normal human being. It's actually fun to watch. It just is. But it's a whole psych thing, right? So for those folks, I send them back to the line. I say, okay, you know what? Let's not walk. I want to make it a lot easier. So I'll just say to them, and I'll stand about 5 feet in front of them. I'll say to them, take a step like you're going to walk towards me. In fact, just walk towards me. And I watch to see which foot they step off with, because they will automatically step off with the foot that is most comfortable for them. So boom. Now, remember, they're going this way, I'm going this way, right? So if they step off with their right foot, that's the furthest foot from the camera. That's not the one that I want to shoot. I want to shoot the other foot. So now I know that I need to actually take the picture on the second step. So I've got to have them take at least 3 steps, right? First step is going to be with the wrong foot. Second step is going to put the the left foot forward, which is the one that I want to photograph. And then third step is just to make sure that they continue moving. So it's only 3 steps. So I'm just going to tell them, okay, all I want to do is I want to have you do 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. If they start out and the very first foot they step off with is their right foot, then good, I'm good to go. I can do it in one step. And so then I back up and I tell them, it's like, all right, so here's how we're going to do this, right? I want to hear you say, hey, hey, and just take a step. Hey, boom. They take a step, I get my shot, boom. So I'm kind of faking the motion, but to the camera, it looks completely real. So the challenge with the recreating motion thing is there's no works every time, do this. It is all psychology. It's about watching your subject, paying attention to your subject, seeing how they're responding. Where most photographers go wrong, gang, just so you know, it's not because you don't know the right things to say. That's really not the problem. Certainly it helps, right? As you hear me talking, even like not saying smile, there are some things that work better than others. It's helpful to know those things, but I didn't read that in a book. Nobody told me those things. I didn't find them in a YouTube video. I had to figure them out. So you can do the same. But the mistake that most of you make is you're not actually paying attention to the body language and what's really going on with your subjects. That's where it all falls apart at the seams, right? So that's really the challenge is, you can go ahead and you can say those things to people, but you really have to pay attention to how are they responding. And as long as you're paying attention to the response you're getting back, it's a lot easier to kind of figure it out on the fly. Remember, you're collaborating with your subject. You can't do it on your own. They can't do it on your own. Now, the second part of that question was, do you just make the move and do you keep taking shots until you get the one that you like? Absolutely. So this was the question was up. Absolutely never. That is not the way to do it, ever. Because unless you've got a very confident and comfortable model, you are just causing tremendous amounts of stress with that subject because you're putting them on the spot. You're like, okay, go. And now you're hiding behind the camera. You're hiding behind the camera, not looking like an idiot. You expect them to be like, and doing all kinds of stuff, right? So that is not the way to get great images. And the simple fact of the matter is, even at a professional level, there are very few models who are actually amazing at posing. Now, that is not a slam on models. It actually has to do with a very simple fact. They can't see what they're doing. Only you can. So you have to give them feedback. So that's why I always talk about emotions, because emotions drive everything. Most importantly, they drive body language, right? So that's the key. It takes practice, gang. That's really what it comes down to. You gotta keep at it and you have to practice it. Okay. All right. Last question from Tony here. Tony got a bunch in early, man. All right. Joe, you've opened up quite a bit since the COVID thing started in both what you shoot and your styles. Have you found that you have improved by trying different things and that your love of photography has grown? Have you found perhaps a secondary niche that you enjoy, maybe like landscapes or macro or abstract or perhaps even architecture? Do you suggest that both new and old do the same, perhaps step away from what you're comfortable with and trying different things just to learn new things? So let's take the last one first, Tony. Do I suggest that people, both new and old to photography, step away every now and then and try something that makes them uncomfortable and is different? Absolutely. I mean, that's huge. Okay. That should be a normal part of your process because that helps with your creativity. That helps build your creativity. It also helps you see things in a fresh way. Have I found a secondary niche? No, not at all. In fact, I'm not going to lie, I'm going stir crazy. I have not photographed a human being since the first week in March. So I may do my first shoot in a very, very long time next week. And I will just work with Monet so that I'm not even dealing with 3 people. I'm just working with Monet. And I feel comfortable working with her because I know that she has been taking extreme cautions throughout all this. So I'm not that worried. But yeah, it's going to be a while before I can get back to normal. I chose abstracts when I started the Stuck at Home Challenge. As I talked about before, when that lockdown hit, I was freaked out. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I'm still kind of freaked out, gang. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty about all of this. So for me, I knew number one, it would help me to jump in and just get crazy busy. And number two, I knew that there would be a lot of people like me. So, you know, my mission is to encourage people and get them to shoot and take pictures. And so that was my plan. It's like, all right. So it's like, okay, what can I do? What can I do in my house? And because we were supposed to be locking down, not going out, right? And because at that point, especially, there were so many uncertainties, we didn't even know if it was safe to go out and shoot landscapes, right? We didn't know. So that's where the abstracts came from. And that's how, you know, that got started. As far as, you know, has it increased my love of photography? I don't know that it's actually that it's possible at this point to increase my love of photography, only in the sense that, you know, I've been at it for my whole life. It's me. It's what I am. It's what I do. It's the way I think and see things. So yeah, so I'm not so sure that there's an increase, you know, in that sense, but I'm definitely chomping at the bit to get back at it. That's for sure. Totally. Okay. All right. Let's see here. This one's a tough one. So from Ken Jordan, I'm a 2-year beginner portrait photographer. At least that's his goal, to become a portrait photographer. He's in stage 3 COPD. Ken, I'm really sorry to hear that. He literally runs out of air in like 10 to 15 minutes. He mostly sits down behind the camera. So his biggest struggle is the uptime, up on his feet, setting up the off-camera flash. It wears him down quickly. Do I have any tips, any tricks or tips for this type of handicap? He's wondering about maybe using wall-mounted boom arms so he's not consistently having to lift stands and move them. He finds himself too often using his handicap as an excuse to not shoot nearly as often as he needs to in order to get better at photography. He has a Canon 80D, stands, tripods, 5 off-camera flash units, 2 that are AC powered, 3 they're battery operated. It works in a small home studio, and he has a 50 millimeter lens and an 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. And I just saw Troy's here. Hey, Troy, haven't seen you in a long time, man. I hope all is well with you. So, yeah, and actually, Ken, I mean, Troy has, you know, some mobility issues too. So Ken, you know, this is a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. I hate reading stuff like this, only in the sense that I can try to understand, but obviously I can't understand, right? I don't have that disability. So here are the things that I can tell you that I think would help. So I know that in Troy's case, Troy frequently will have his son or his wife go along and be his assistants. So that helps. Now, maybe you can't do that, and obviously that's understandable. So that being the case, then, if you are able to mount or have someone mount wall arms like the ones that I have in my home studio, I would say yes, that is a huge asset, because even though you would need to stand up to then adjust them and move them, you know, it's much less stress and weight and much less of a challenge to be able to do that, as long as you can get up to do it, okay? If you need information on that, here, let me go ahead and switch my screen over really quick. On my YouTube channel, we can, whoops, let's see, home studio. I have the information on those And really? Oh, take out S. There we go. Try that one more time, Joe. There it is. I have information about those wall mount arms in this video. So there's the link in the chat window for you. I mean, I think that the other thing that you could potentially do, Ken, and again, this is going to depend on your space and everything else. If you use a mobility device, whether it be a wheelchair or whether it be some type of a scooter, and you're in a small space, a home studio, and you need to get lights up, I would try to put as little on the floor as possible. But if you have space, you could get light stands with wheels on the bottom. And the catch would be you want to make sure that they are what's called a gas-filled stand. Gas-filled stands, when you loosen them, they don't go and drop hard where you can potentially damage your light or pinch your fingers, right? They're going to drop, but there's like a gas shock absorber. And also because of that, when you loosen that, they kind of spring up a little bit, and then you could lift them and probably do it from a seated position. Okay. The other thing, and this is kind of counterintuitive from a photography standpoint, but sometimes it's maybe a necessity from a practicality standpoint. So especially since you're kind of a beginner, Ken, and Troy will tell you firsthand, him and I have gone around on this idea, right? If you're 2 years in, now I don't know how often you get to shoot, right? But if you're 2 years in and you're still working with an 80D and you've got 5 lights and you're still only working with a 50mm lens and a kit lens, I feel, and I don't know you, so I'm making some assumptions here, right? I hope I'm wrong. But I feel like you're kind of getting ahead of yourself. 5 lights is a lot of lights, man. I mean, I love a lot of light, right? But I've also been at it for 40 some years. So I would encourage you, if you can be honest with yourself, if you've kind of gotten ahead of yourself, it would actually help your photography a lot to take 4 of those lights, or at least 3 of them, and go put them in a box in the closet and leave them there like 6 months or a year. And learn how to do really great lighting with 1 or 2 lights. Number 1, it's going to be less work for you. That certainly makes it easier. It's going to preserve your energy, right? Number 2, understand that I don't care how much light you throw at a shot. At the end of the day, what's in front of the camera is what's going to make the picture. Simply is, period. So do understand that you can have a dramatic impact on the overall quality of your photography by maybe working with a makeup artist, but making sure that you're doing all the right things in front of the camera. Because even with the lack of mobility, that brings you challenges. Let's say you're working with a model. It's a lot harder for you to be able to make an adjustment on the model or things like that. So you really need to have someone there to help you, all those kinds of things. So, I would suggest maybe a kind of a grouping of things. 1, maybe the wall arms, or at least gas-loaded stands on dollies, on wheels, so that they can be moved easily. But I would try to avoid that if you don't have a decent amount of floor space, and of course, depending upon how you actually do get around. And then I would actually encourage you to try and work with a little bit less light, at least until you're at the point that you can say confidently, you really know what you're doing with it. And part of the reason why I'm trying to simplify there is, 1, people that are only 2 years in and have that much lighting usually tend to be a little bit ahead of themselves. They just do. So I apologize for applying that stereotype. But the other thing is, if it turns out you don't actually need 5 lights to do the kind of shots that you want, well, that's a lot less work getting up and down and moving stuff and adjusting stuff if you only have to work with 2 or 3, right? So you just kind of want to make sure that you're really really figure that part out first, okay? And certainly, Ken, Troy has offered to chat with you and try and help you. So I know you posted this shot or this comment in my Facebook group. If you want to reach out to me through the Facebook group, I will gladly put you in touch with Troy. And certainly, if there are any other things that I can do with advice to that to help you out, do not hesitate. Post your questions in the group, and I will do everything I can to try and get you the right information. Okay. All right. Let's see. Stephanie had a question here. I think this is my last one that came in early. So from Stephanie, Stephanie, this one requires like an entire 2-hour webinar. So I'm going to give you the overview for now. I'd like to know more about light modifiers. I don't have the cash to buy a bunch of stuff that I won't use, just to play with them to figure out if I like them or not. And that's good, okay? Because having the cash to do all that kind of stuff, you're just going to waste a lot of time, a lot of money. So the question she has is, what does a grid do? To me, it looks like it wouldn't do much, and why should I use it? So it actually does a lot, but not always good, okay? I'll get to that in a second. Why choose an octagon over a rectangular softbox? Why use ring lights, especially if you're not shooting from the center of the ring? Why use gels, and how do you pick what color for what effect? So let's start at the end, right? With regards to the gels, I want to start there. On July 2nd, Stephanie, I have an online presentation coming up all about working with colored gels. Sign up, take that presentation. I'll teach you everything you need to know about working with color gels, okay? The next one, why use ring lights, especially if you aren't shooting from them from the center of the ring? Well, with regard to the ring lights, the biggest reason to use a ring light is so that you can look like everybody else on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. So obviously I'm being a bit of a smartass, right? There's really no reason to use a ring light unless you want that circular catch light. Certainly, you can take the ring light and you can put it over here as a key light or a fill or whatever. A ring light, you don't have to shoot through a ring light. But indeed, if you use ring lights as a key light, the simple fact is they do have a very distinct catch light, which is not always attractive or flattering. It can be a distraction, right? Why choose an octagon over a rectangular softbox? This is one that I talk about a lot, and I've actually talked about this in a bunch of my videos, okay? In fact, Joe, here. Sorry, let me switch my screen over. I'm going to go back to my YouTube channel, and a very recent video that I did, catch lights. Watch this this video, Stephanie, and this is going to tell you the answer to your question about why use an octagon over a rectangular softbox. For me, I prefer round, not even octagons. I prefer ones that are actually round, but I talk about that in the video. I give you the whole breakdown, so make sure that you watch that one. What does a grid do? It doesn't look like it would do much, and why use it? So this is one of my hot topic questions. Not for you, Stephanie, you're fine. But the majority of the people that I run into online that are using grids are using them because they saw some dude on YouTube use them, and he had really cool pictures, and like, oh my God, I gotta use grids. And yet their pictures suck by comparison to the guy on YouTube. And that's because they don't actually, number one, understand why to use the grid, and number two, they don't understand the inverse square law. Grids serve several purposes. The first and foremost, biggest reason, primary design of a grid, is it retards the spread of light. So as soon as light leaves a source, which in the case of a softbox or an octabox, that's the front panel. That becomes a source, even though the light's behind it, right? The point is, as soon as the light comes through that diffuser, the light spreads. So what a grid does, since it sticks out 1.5 inches to 2 inches, depending on the grid, it slows down that spread, because once the light passes the grid, it spreads. That's all part of the inverse square law, okay? Grids, the easiest example of when to use a grid, if you're shooting in a really small space and you're trying to light your subject, but you don't want the light to hit the background because you can't separate your subject from the background, then what you do is you move the light a little bit more to the side and you angle it with a grid, and the grid is going to help prevent the light from also hitting the background. It's just going to hit your subject. Do you need grids? No. I have grids only because the modifiers that I'm using came with them. Do I use them? Hardly ever. I hate them because one of the downsides is that you cannot change. A grid will take a soft box and make the light not as soft. It's just part of the nature of what a grid does by design. But definitely, I will tell you that the overwhelming majority of my videos, not the talk chats, but my tutorial videos, especially like the last frame videos and that where I show you my shoots and how I break down things and show the lighting, you can see how I use all these modifiers and I break it down like in great detail in every one. Also, what I would encourage you to do, if you want to learn a little bit more about light placement and modifiers and that kind of stuff, go to my Instagram profile, as crazy as that sounds. Let me see, is this plugged in? Maybe it's plugged in. I don't know if I can do this. Let's see. Let me see if I can actually share my phone with you guys. I can, it's not plugged in, sorry. So anyway, on my Instagram profile, every one of my posts is a swipe, and you can see behind the scenes video clips. You can see lighting diagrams, all that kind of stuff is in there. All the details on how the shot was made, lighting diagrams, it's all there. So that stuff will also help you out a lot, okay? All right. So, look at you guys. More last frame videos. You're going to start back up doing the last frame videos again when you can. I have a feeling that I'm going to start doing last frame videos sooner than later. So stay tuned. But yeah, there's going to be more YouTube stuff coming. I promise. Don't worry. Okay. Let's see. Another one. So this question again. Please tell me how I can address you in English, because I don't know what that name means. I'm sorry, okay? And I would like to be able to call you something. Another vaguely related question. What do you think about shooting outdoors without any modifiers? Stephanie, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, okay? And Stephanie, I know you're like in my groups and that. If you have specific questions, never hesitate. Ask, okay? How do you feel about shooting outdoors without any modifiers? Dubu. Okay, Dubu, is that right? I hope that's right. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just nice to have a name, right? I will try to remember that. So do you think that it's a good challenge to improve your control of light, or the opposite? So I don't use modifiers outdoors a lot at all. Now, in all fairness, I shoot indoors much more than I shoot outdoors, right? But if you've followed me and you watch my work, you know that I do shoot outdoors. In fact, I have a video on my YouTube channel, just to give you an example here. We'll switch back. If you haven't, it's an older video, but it's got great information in it. We're gonna do a quick search here. How to shoot portraits in bright sunlight. Now, there's a bit of a joke here that I never actually talk about in the video, but if you watch the video, one of the things that you will notice if you pay attention is that I take you through, I put the link in the chat window there. I take you through like six different lighting scenarios outdoors. And the title of the video, How to Shoot Portraits in Bright Sunlight, every one of the lighting scenarios, except for one, I put my model in the shade, right? So yeah, I love working outdoors. I love working with, at most, just a simple reflector. Keep it really, really easy. In fact, if you're going to work with a reflector outdoors, I would encourage you, start with this video that I'm also going to paste in. It's called Stop Making Bad Light. Whoops, that's not what we wanted. Let me get you the right, sorry. Copy the link address. There it is. This will prevent you from making a lot of the rookie mistakes that people make with reflectors. So yeah, I would check those out and they'll help you out. Okay. All right, I'm going back up the list here. Let's see. And all right. From Eric, what criteria do you use when culling your images? Do you only delete the ones that can't be used if you have 10 similar shots? And are they all fine? Do you keep all, or just the one or two you like? So Eric, I'm, number one, I'm all about details. Number two, I'm really fussy about details. So what's that mean? That means if I have 10 similar shots, there's still only one or two that are like, yeah, like that's it. So no, I don't keep them. I go through and, I find, the one. Maybe I'll keep a second one if it's really, really close and maybe I'm a little unsure, but no, just because there's 10 similar, if I'm doing my job, and even though maybe I am using a pose, right? And maybe my subject's not moving, they're just sitting there, but I'm working facial expressions. So that's really the only variety that's happening. That's okay. There's still going to be one best one. And then maybe there's one or two others. They're close. They can all be similar, but there's still, if I'm being fussy enough and really paying attention to details, and usually what's going to make the difference in the final one, it's going to be a little something in the eyes, or excuse me, a little something in the mouth, and a lot in the eyes. It's going to be the eyes that really kind of, make it happen. Okay? All right. Let's see. Scrolling on up here. What else did I miss here? And let's see. And Sonny, thank you so much for those kind words, man. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. So scrolling on up. Tina, so when you photograph people walking, you want to take the shot when the left foot is coming forward? If so, do you have the time to stay away? Not necessarily, Tina. In the scenario that I explained, right? So as I'm looking at the subject, I was to the right of the subject. Hence, I want the left foot coming forward. Why? Because I get a nicer line on the butt. Literally, that's why. Okay? If I have the other foot coming forward, I tend to have the person looking like they're leaning backwards. If I'm to the right of them. If I was to the left of them, then I would want the right foot coming forward. Okay? So, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's about understanding body language. Like a big mistake that photographers make. So I'll give you a posing tip, guys. So this is not like have them hold it, but it's just, and you're not gonna see my head, but you don't need to see my head. So if you're doing a full length shot of like a model in a bikini, right? So obviously we know, especially for a woman, if you have the person facing forward, this is like the widest view of the body. You've got the width of the shoulders, the hips, all that kind of stuff. So let's break down that bikini pageant pose that we always see, right? So, and obviously this would be for a woman, okay? But so the bikini pageant pose, what do? First, they turn their feet slightly. The feet are still together, but they turn their feet slightly to one side. Left or right, doesn't matter, okay? Now that you've done that, what have we done? We slimmed a little bit, right? And I can stand this way, so you want to kind of look at my legs, but if I turn my shoulders back to the camera, they don't have to come all the way back square because now that's the widest point. But most of the way now, what I've done is I've made myself look thinner. And this is a loose shirt. I have a little bit of a belly, right? So here I'm actually, my feet are facing here. So you see where my feet are. So again, straight ahead, there's the width. If I just turn that much and allow my shoulders to come back a little, I make myself look thinner. Now, imagine the bikini girl, right? The mistake that people tend to make is this back leg, they bend that one. Now, you can't see it on me, and I'm not about to put a bikini on, but if you stand up and try that, and I defy you, unless you're standing someplace where you can look stupid, stand up and do what I'm doing. The leg that your weight is on, so not the leg that you bend, but the leg that your weight is on, you can feel that you immediately put a crease in your butt. And if you watch a model in a bikini or even like a pair of fitness pants, when she does that, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to make her butt look bigger, or it's going to basically kind of squish the butt. Hey, Mr. Seth. I figured Seth would show up just when I'm standing here posing like a girl in a bikini. Thank you for that, Seth. It's good to see you, man. I hope all is well. So anyway, so the back leg thing, the problem with that is you basically take all the shape out of this side of the body, even once they come around and they do the little twist. So you want to bend the front leg. Because when you bend the front leg, now you've got the curves coming up with the butt and then the little twist, and it's thinner, right? So the challenge when it comes to get back to Tina with her question, the challenge with like, well, should it be left foot? Should it be right foot? Do you turn this way? Do you turn that way? Unfortunately, gang, there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes into play, right? Seth, yeah, we'll use that for Tinder. And there's no one size fits all answer, right? Especially like I use the example of Alvin. I'm going in and out because the microphone's right here. Sorry. All right. You should have me back now. Okay. The challenge that you have to work through when you do this is basically you've got to pay attention to all the little details, because some of the things that are going to drive your decisions, Tina, You may have a subject who like doesn't like one side of their face or the other. So they've got a preference for one side or the other. So that's going to determine, okay, you want them going one way or another, right? So there's kind of all those factors that come in. If you are a commercial photographer that's doing advertising work, the directions that you're going to work in could be determined by your client. In other words, they may be telling you, hey, Lane, I'm on TikTok. You should go check it out, man. Your client may be telling you, hey, we need the subjects facing this way, or we need them facing this way, so that they kind of fit into an ad, right? Hey, Seth, you would be able to rock these, man. They're just Dickies shirts. And then I had them, monogrammed. So anyway, hey, Seth, since you're here, what are you doing next Wednesday night? Are you free next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock? Because if you're free, we're going to do Talk Chat together. Let me know, and then I'll catch up with you, okay? We have talked about it, and unfortunately, things got crazy for me, and I know he's been running around like a crazy man. He's been everywhere. So anyway, Tina, I hope that helps, but just to give you a starting point, okay? All right, I want to scroll back up here. I know there were some others, and let's see. And Rajinder, you're colorblind. You have no one to analyze or critique your pick for colors. Can I have a quick look and see if there's any issues? So here's the thing, Rajinder. I will help you, but I won't do it on here, and I won't do it privately. Not trying to be difficult. Let me explain, right? For me to take the time and just look at your stuff, which I will gladly do, I'm only helping you, one person, right? So what I would ask you to do, Rajinder, is join my Facebook group. Okay, if you join my Facebook group, then I can have you post your images in there. You need to make sure that you follow the rules. I don't know what you shoot, so I'm going to have you join the general group. So this could be any kind of picture in this group. It's the Tog Knowledge group, right? And put a little message with your post about the color blindness and wanting to have somebody look at your images, and then I'll gladly review them in there, because then the comments that I make and the information that I give can help several hundred people instead of just one person, okay? So yeah, go ahead and join the group, and I'll help you out with that. Mikkel, whoops, it didn't go through. There it is. Do I have any good videos on setting up the Mark II and the Mark III, which you just bought? Congratulations. You shoot a lot in the studio and location and scenic. You've been using Olympus for 15 years and loving it. You know, Mikkel, I haven't. But here's what I would suggest that you do. Obviously, with the Mark III being fairly new, there's not a ton of here's the setup videos. So I personally kind of have a moral objection to that, unless we're talking about really, really like challenging topics. Like as an example, if you're a birding photographer, Olympus has incredible capabilities for, photographing birds in flight, but they're not default settings. They are more advanced focus settings. So people like Scott Bourne, who's one of my fellow Olympus Visionaries, who is an incredible birding photographer, he shares very openly all of his settings and breakdowns and everything like that. The reason why for generalized work, I'm not a fan of it though, is because like my workflow is not going to be your workflow. It's not going to be the next guy's workflow. And I find what happens is, because I get questions all the time, people like, well, like so-and-so does this, but when I do it, it kind of doesn't work for me. It's like, well, yeah, right? Because you're not that person, and you're clearly missing something about their workflow compared to your workflow, and that's where the offset is. So what I would encourage you to do, Mikkel, is I believe you're in my Facebook groups, right? If you post that in the Facebook group with specific questions about what settings are you interested in. In other words, you know how deep the Olympus menus are, right? So don't ask me like, hey, what are all your menu settings? But tell me specifically like, hey, I'm wondering, how do you handle your focus with this? How do you do this? I will gladly share with you what my settings are. I have no problem doing that. And obviously, even though I'm an Olympus ambassador, I love Olympus, I use all the gear, I try to keep my YouTube channel about photography, not just, gear specific, but I will jump through hoops to help you out. So just give me some specifics in terms of what you're looking for, and I will gladly help you with that, okay? All right, so thank you guys for all the kind words about the online classes, the webinars. I appreciate that. And let's see here, scrolling on up. Still got a few minutes. Oh, I still got a few minutes. Like, see, I told you I'd run over time. It's 10 after 7, and I'm still here. Steve Wilking had a question about the paid classes. Is it still 48 hours for viewing? Yes. Yeah, you get 48 hours afterwards to be able to review it. Tina Bergson, what recommendation regarding people who teach about using Photoshop? So I'll give you a recommendation, but I need to tell you something first, Tina, so you don't make a mistake, right? My recommendation is my buddy Unmesh Dinda. He runs the channel Pix Imperfect, okay? But before you run out, it's kind of like, and Tina, I know you follow me, right? So it's kind of like picking your mentor. The idea is you want to find somebody whose channel that you understand, you like the way they teach, you can follow along with their videos, and they make sense. And for Photoshop especially, Tina, stick with them for a while, like a long while. Do not watch other YouTube channels about Photoshop then. The reason being, Photoshop is software where there's like 40 ways to be able to do like everything. So if you start skipping around from teacher to teacher, you're going to get yourself, as a beginner, you're going to get yourself so confused because one guy does it this way, the other guy says, that sucks, I do it this way. Another guy's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, do it this way. And none of them are wrong because it works for them, right? So what you really want to do is kind of a little bit of shopping in the sense of find the teacher that you kind of connect with, and that's who you want to follow. Seth, take care, man. Thanks for stopping by. I will text you and we'll make it happen next Wednesday, 6 o'clock, okay? But find the person that you can really connect with. The reason why I recommend Unmesh is that, number one, he's young, which means he's very open-minded. He has a lot of great ideas, and he sees things with a more open mind. Number two, incredibly well-spoken, as long as you don't mind the word video. He is Indian, so you know he pronounces his V's as W's, which is kind of funny. I like to pick on him for that. But he is extremely thorough. He is very, very detailed, and he's really great at simplifying. And as you go from one video to the next video to the next video with him, yes, Tina, Unmesh Dinda, except it's Unmesh, U-M-E-S-H. His channel name is Pix, P-I-X, I-M, perfect. So all one word, Pix Imperfect. Other people that are out there, Tina, that you could look at obviously the great Mr. Scott Kelby. There are people like Aaron Nace, who runs the channel Phlearn, P-H-L-E-A-R-N, which is free ones, but then also, there's a paid level to that. Buddy of mine by the name of Colin Smith, who's out on the West Coast. He runs the channel Photoshop Cafe. Awesome. So there's quite a few people out there that do Photoshop work. But again, if you find one technique and start comparing, you're going to find everybody approaches it differently, and that can become really confusing, right? So find somebody that you kind of really connect with that makes sense, and then that's where you're going to go from there. Whew. All right, gang, I'm like way over time. Thank you for hanging out tonight. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm just saying, I love it when you guys have like really detailed questions that we can really dig into. So yeah, have a great week. Pick up the cameras, just because life's starting to get back to normal again, kinda, right? Things are gonna get stupidly crazy. And I get it, we all got a lot of catching up to do in life in general, right? But prioritize those cameras. You got a lot of money invested in them. I know you guys all put a lot of time and effort into it. Find the time to take pictures, all right? And whatever you do, gang, you know the drill. Please make sure you remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TOGCHAT. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.